I'm sure if I said the words greatest games of all time, various titles flash through your mind. That list will be informed by your tastes, the culture of games released as you grew up, and many other things. But then there are those select titles that with the passage of time have entered the pantheon of gaming. Mega Man 2, released in 1988 in the Nintendo Entertainment System, is one of those games that usually comes up when reflecting on NES games that have made a huge impact in the gaming industry. But almost 40 years later, one might wonder, how good is this game when you sit down and play it in 2024? Does the game stand up on its game design, or did you have to be there to experience it? Well, today, we're going to look at the history of and my current perspective on Mega Man 2 and find out if I think it still holds up. If anyone needs a refresher from the previous video, Mega Man 1 was released only a year prior to the sequel. This one was a fun side-scroller that showed much potential if it was properly tapped into. Mega Man 1 had many problems, but was also innovative in many respects. But the issue was that Mega Man 1 just wasn't that popular. The abysmal US box art is certainly on the list of reasons why, but the game gained some traction through word of mouth because the game was still pretty good at the end of the day. The people behind Mega Man, like the director, Akira Kitamura, wanted to do a sequel, but the sales of the first game just didn't justify it being a big project for Capcom. However, they allowed the team to make Mega Man 2 only if they did it on the side of working on other projects. The game was made by developers crunching overtime to do multiple projects at once. The fact that this game was produced under such trying conditions and also turned out to be this massive passion project that became so iconic is just something I find really admirable about Mega Man 2. Like I said up top, if you ask any game-playing enthusiast who grew up in the 80s what the best games were, odds are they mentioned Mega Man 2 at least once, because this game went on to sell over 1 million copies and is still one of the highest-selling Mega Man games ever released. The game made the front cover on an issue of the Nintendo Power magazine, and it has a vastly superior box art in the US. The Japanese version still uses the same art style from the first game, only with some refinements like more detailed character designs in the Robot Masters and more dynamic composition compared to the key art of the first game. But then in the US, you could make fun of it because the character's silhouette is still nothing like Mega Man, and he uses a gun and has a visor on his helmet. But I don't know, I think this version of Mega Man has charm to it. Mega Man and the Robot Masters kind of look like old school comic book characters to me. Mega Man makes me think of somebody like the old Blue Beetle, for example. It's not how Mega Man should look, but as an adaptation of the idea of Mega Man, I think this looks really endearing. Selling players in the game much better than the horrid abomination on the cover of Mega Man 1, which doesn't even mention this Flash Gordon-looking Mega Man from the European cover art. The European art was at least good enough to be featured in the Complete Works art book, which cannot be said for the US art, but I just thought that was funny to say. Anyway, this game is a critical darling of the massive NES library, but a nearly countless amount of Mega Man games have been released since 1988, many of which are games I hold quite dear. These are games that take the foundation of Mega Man 2 and greatly expand upon it. So when actually putting Mega Man 2 under that critical microscope, how will I feel about it? Like the first game, I haven't played this in years. I have played it multiple times for sure, though I don't actually remember that first playthrough quite like Mega Man 1. I do know I tried getting into this game in like 2014 or so, but I didn't get very far, so I don't really count that. This was a while before I ever tried X1, which was when I properly became a Mega Man fan. But I do remember publishing that Let's Play I did in 2016, specifically Part 1, which came out the day after a snowstorm and I was walking home from the bus after school, walking through the ice for 25 minutes thinking about how epic this Part 1 was going to be for its audience of 9 people.
So I'll just start off by saying, Mega Man set the foundation of the series. Mega Man 2 really told us this is what Mega Man's gonna be.
But yeah, I haven't fully played through Mega Man 2 since then. I always thought the game was good, so will I still feel that way? Will I think it's overrated? Well, let's find out. The presentation is much more pleasing than the first game. That game just took you from the title screen straight into the menu. In this one, you get the iconic opening scene where it's explained that after Dr. Wily's defeat in Mega Man 1, he's now returned with 8 of his own evil robot masters and it's up to Mega Man to stop them. The recap doing a new rendition on the Mega Man 1 ending theme as it pans up to the building to reveal Mega Man with the new theme that may as well be the anthem of the Mega Man franchise. The hits don't stop at the title screen though. Mega Man 2 has an iconic soundtrack through and through. Pick any stage and fans could be able to hum their way through it because the compositions are all really catchy and upbeat. It's fantastic. The stage select screen features these portraits of the Robot Masters rather than the sprites standing in a box like the first game. The backgrounds and foregrounds also have more detail and variety than the first game. The artists used everything in their power on the NES to have that location variety despite the limited technology. A really cool trick I hadn't noticed until I played the game on my CRT was that with the way the screen looked on a CRT, the trees in the background of Woodman's stage look like they're moving. Something lost in translation when playing the game with a digital signal, but I still thought it was a cool thing to witness. In almost every way, Mega Man 2 is a visual upgrade from the first game, though there are still some issues that carry over and are made worse than the original. First, the game can be prone to slowdown when there's too much action on the screen, and the graphics are very prone to sprite flickering, where character sprites will start flashing rapidly. But otherwise, I think Mega Man 2 is much improved from the original in the presentation category. But I thought the first game was fine in terms of visuals and sound anyway. One of the main areas it stumbled in was how Mega Man handled. The controls were very simple. In fact, the controls are exactly the same in Mega Man 2. What is different is that Mega Man is now much more responsive when you press the D-pad. He just starts running instead of taking a second to get to top speed, and he comes to a stop when you let go of the button, and his jumps feel much more predictable. Mega Man doesn't have that slipperiness or heaviness to his controls, and that alone makes Mega Man 2 a lot more enjoyable to play through than the first game. One of the biggest innovations this game added to the formula was the addition of energy tanks, or E-tanks for short. Mega Man can collect them in stages. When you're about to run out of health, you can use an E-tank for a full health restore, though it's a one-time use item. Sounds pretty simple, and it is, but still, the E-tank is a staple of all classic Mega Man games, and is one of the most recognizable items from the series in the broader gaming culture, so I figured I'd mention that its debut was Mega Man 2. This game isn't that difficult, as we'll discuss later, but it can mean the difference between life and death at certain moments, so that's worthy of credit. The most significant contribution Mega Man 2 made to the formula was the addition of 2 extra Robot Master stages. In this game, Mega Man battles against Metal Man, Woodman, Airman, Bubble Man, Heat Man, Crash Man, Flash Man, and Quick Man. That may sound like a small addition, but just having 2 extra main stages just gives the game more time to breathe. Replaying Mega Man 1 just surprised me with how short that game actually is, taking less than an hour to beat if you know what you're doing. Mega Man 2 is longer and more fleshed out as an experience. 8 stages was so much better that literally every Mega Man platformer after this would use this as the baseline model. In those stages, I found the design much more compelling. For example, a stage like Bubble Man requires the player to fight an enemy on the platform ahead of you so you can jump to it. Then later, you'll see how much floatier Mega Man is underwater and need to time your movements to get through these obstacles while not jumping so high that you hit the spikes and get instantly killed. Airman is another example where you have to be patient while trying to navigate through the obstacles, as these platforms will send out enemies from the sides, and then a later part forces you to kill the enemies in these moving platforms and then time your jumps to it or else you'll fall into the abyss. Not every level in this game is amazing, as I can discuss in more depth later on, but I'm trying to say that for the most part, Mega Man 2 offers a set of stages with consistently good design. Not the most complex designs or the harshest of timing challenges the genre has ever seen, but I just think the level design really gets the job done and still holds up now. Bosses still give Mega Man new weapons upon defeat, and a nice little improvement is that the game stops to highlight this fact after defeating a boss. Not like it was super difficult to figure out in the first game, you just had to pause the game, but still, the weapon get screen just feels like you earned something big after beating a stage. The weapons in Mega Man 2 are really good and do a lot of damage and are very versatile. Maybe too good, honestly. Mega Man 2 is one of the most hilariously broken games that I've ever played in the player's favor. You might ask, why do I start my Mega Man 2 run with Metal Man stage? Well, that's because beating him gives Mega Man the Metal Blades, which I think are a shoo-in for the most overpowered weapon in the history of video games. Definitely the most OP weapon in a side-scroller. One of the main challenges of Mega Man is how the default weapon only shoots energy pellets directly in front of you, so you need to jump up and down to line up your shots with enemies. The Metal Blades take this design philosophy and break it in half. This weapon can be fired in 8 directions and has almost no drawbacks. Most enemies are vulnerable to it, and can be easily defeated with it since it has more range than any other weapon in the game, and even the series, really. Then the ammo consumption is nearly non-existent. It takes 4 shots to use up 1 bar of energy. And best of all, if you just pause the game after 3 shots, the count refreshes, essentially giving you infinite ammo for the most broken weapon in the game that is easily obtained via one of the game's simpler stages. And even if that was not true, Mega Man 2 showers players in health and ammo drops, so no matter what, you'll never be starved of Metal Blade ammunition. The game may have introduced the 8 bosses mold for Mega Man, but the weakness chain in Mega Man 2 is also screwy because the Metal Blades can demolish like half the boss roster. Flash Man, Bubble Man, and Woodman are all weak to the thing. Heck, Metal Man himself can be killed in one hit with his own weapon. Though of course, that's only on the normal mode. The US version of Mega Man 2 comes with a normal mode and a difficult mode. The difficult mode is just the Japanese original. Take a look at the damage charts in the Mega Man wiki and you'll see that the main difference is just that the damage values were doubled in the US version. I'm not going to tell you which one you should play, because I suppose the Japanese version being slightly more difficult because of boss damage values means it is the more complete version, but I also find it really funny to fight bosses in the US version and demolish them in 2 seconds. This naturally leads to my next point, which is that I'm not even complaining about how broken the metal blades are anyway. I could make this a segment about proper game balance and how a weapon this powerful really should have some drawbacks to it. Like how maybe it should do way less damage to compensate for its range, or consume more ammo, or just not have as wide of a range. There are several ways to make this weapon more balanced, but when just playing through Mega Man 2, it's fucking hilarious to just destroy enemies from wherever they are knowing they stand no chance against you. Sometimes it's just fun to be overpowered in a video game and blast your way through, especially in a game that isn't particularly long anyway. Think back to the weapons of Mega Man 1. Half of them were virtually useless. This game gives you a bunch of powerful weapons, and one of them is a ferocious beast.
Ferocious beast? Run, Sly, run! Fear the beast!
That's the thing. With this game's development cycle, I don't think they had the time to really sit down and put in a lot of thought into how the weapons interacted with the game world and how they were balanced with each other. I think they just thought, wouldn't it be cool if? And so yeah, one weapon just fires in every direction with virtually infinite ammo. If every Mega Man game were this broken, perhaps would be a problem, but in the second game in a series that would later correct this issue, coming off a first game where most of the weapons sucked, I think it's pretty fun and cool. Originally, I imagined I was going to get in here and critique the game because the metal blades were so OP, then I would do my second run where I went out of my way to do the stages without beating Metal Man first, and this would show that the difficulty balancing in this game was all kinds of messed up, but my second playthrough of this game was illuminating in ways I didn't expect. I actually thought playing the levels with the regular loadout was a decent shakeup from how I usually play this game. In Woodman stage, I was shocked by how much more alert I had to be since the bats were coming up from above and I needed to time my way around them. The birds dropping bags with tiny enemies were easily disposed of with the metal blades, and these were now an obstacle I needed to consider, alongside these ape-looking mechs that come up from below. The stage just had a lot more going on when I played it primarily using the standard shots. Same goes for Bubble Man. I just remember this level and its layout more fondly when I'm not cheesing it. So now I have an extra appreciation for the stages if I were using the blades or not. Though I didn't like Crash Man's stage much. Aesthetically, I thought it was neat as you keep getting higher and higher and the background gets darker and darker until it's nothing but stars. Climbing to space is a cool set piece, but when enemies are dropping in from every which way, without the metal blades it becomes kind of irksome. But through not using the metal blades, I got to experiment with the other weapons in the game and saw how powerful most of them were too. Did you know that the air shooter just destroys these walking mechs? I didn't until now. The atomic fire can be charged up to multiple levels to do more damage. Bubble lead does a lot of damage as it scales along the ground, and the list goes on with these weapons. Like I said, this run gave me more appreciation for the game. I was even pleasantly surprised by the two most infamous levels of the 8. First, in Quick Man stage, you have to dodge these lasers for the whole level that kill you in one hit. The easiest way through it is using the Time Stopper weapon to freeze time and disable the lasers. For the longest time, I thought that was basically the only way through this without extreme trial and error, but on this run where I actually gave it a chance, it wasn't so bad. I got through it first try. Now granted, this is not my first playthrough of this game, and this exact set piece is reused in Mega Man X5, a game I have played many times. But still. In Heat Man stage, there's another infamous part where you jump through disappearing and reappearing blocks, but this is the fastest version in series history, all over a bottomless pit. This too wasn't as undoable as I thought it would be. I died right at the end, but if I kept trying, I'm sure I would have made it. It was just a part where the challenge really went up, and I don't think I can complain about that. But still, to get through it, I just used a thing called Item 2, which allows you to fly over the level for as long as the energy meter lasts. Much preferable to actually attempting this death trap of game design. Oh, and before I forget, something weird happened to me in this level on my second run where I was waiting for these blocks to appear like normal, and they refused to do so until I ran back and off-screened them and came back and they showed up as intended. Don't know if that's ever happened to anybody else before. But yeah, like I said, I think Mega Man 2 is a good roster of levels. It's not perfectly designed, but I think it's a solid set of stages. One that I've gained a newfound fondness for after this playthrough, which leads swimmingly into the Dr. Wily Castle, the final 4 stages. Given much more pizzazz here with the actual image of the castle being shown between levels. Like the first game, these final stages will use all your abilities since the designers know you have them all. Wily Castle 1 using 2 of Mega Man's items. I just alluded to this a moment ago when talking about Heat Man stage, but how it works is that you get all 3 items by defeating Heat Man, Air Man, and Flash Man respectively. Item 1 creates a platform you can stand on and you can make 3 in a row. Item 2 we already went over, and Item 3 is similar to Item 1 in that it's a platform, but one that will bounce on the ground when tossed, and when it hits a wall you can use it to scale up it. After using this to climb the outside of the castle in Wily 1, you fight the Mecha Dragon boss, which is a quick chase and then an easy kill with a quick boomerang. However, don't die, because the checkpoint is way further back. Upon entering Wily Castle 2, you'll notice that all your weapons still have the same ammo from the previous stage. To make the Wily Castle feel more like a gauntlet, you don't get the ammo replenished between stages unless you get a game over. Though I wouldn't rely on that, since getting a game over does get rid of all your E-tanks, so I'd recommend sticking it out for the most part, as these levels are pretty simple. Nothing a player who made it this far couldn't handle, like corridors of spikes or waiting on these platforms in each room that gradually increase in difficulty with each one. Though I have to mention the boss fight at the end of Wily Castle 4. I've always called it the Crash Bomber boss, but apparently its name is the Boo Beam Trap. But I suppose the name is fitting because this is quite the death trap. The gimmick is that nothing besides the Crash Bomber is capable of damaging the 5 cores scattered around the room. But you also need to destroy some of these doors with the Crash Bomber as well. There's not enough ammo to destroy every door and every core. So the real trick of the boss is solving the puzzle by drawing out a route through the room with your various items to where you can destroy as few of the doors as possible to save ammo. One wasted shot means you can't win. It sounds simple enough, but like I said, if you mess up, you can't win, and to replenish your ammo, you need to just wait around and hope to get a game over and then have to play the stage from the beginning. It's just a weird difficulty spike, because Mega Man 2 has never had a boss requiring this much from the players before this point. I got through it in the first try, but still. I said these were the final 4 stages, but technically there are 6 levels in this game's final castle. But Wily Castle 5 is just the boss rush, and the 6th stage is an easily navigable cavern. But before I get ahead of myself, it's refreshing to play the boss rush in Mega Man 2 compared to how many times I've played the X games over the years. Longtime viewers would know that I think this is the worst part of almost every Mega Man game, refighting all the bosses before the final battle. Mega Man 1 and Mega Man X1 had both placed the boss rush throughout the final stages, which I suppose is my favorite way to do it. However, I can't complain too much about a boss rush done like Mega Man 2, and here's why. In the NES Mega Man games, the bosses don't have iframes, so you can beat them in like 30 seconds and then they die in like 2 seconds and you're on to the next one. When in something like Mega Man X2, you have to wait a few seconds before each hit and then wait through a 15-second explosion scene for each one. And then X4 adds that warning animation before each boss, further dragging down the pace. But on the NES, it was perfectly tolerable. And on the boss against Wily, I thought it was funny because I kept dying at first, and that was because I was trying way too hard to dodge the attacks and trying to aim my shots. When the truth is, you just get in there and spam the metal blades and you win in like 20 seconds. The final stage is, as I said, a run through this cavern that ends with Dr. Wily turning into a space alien as the final boss, only for this to be revealed as a hologram before Wily gives up the second time. But then, after a high-energy action platformer like this one, you get kind of a melancholic ending. There's no text explaining it or anything, you just get an ending scene of Mega Man walking home as the 4 seasons progress in the background, while kind of sad music plays as the final shot shows Mega Man's helmet left behind in the fields. Perhaps this is looking too deep into it, but I don't know, maybe this ending was supposed to be like the story of the game's development? Like, it was a hard fight and now everyone gets to go home. Mega Man hangs up his helmet, maybe to never return, but he'll always be ready to do so when the need arises. Perhaps the developers got the chance to make Mega Man 2 as this passion project but had no idea if it would ever get a sequel, perhaps thinking this was Mega Man's final adventure, merely being glad it got the chance to exist at all. Yeah, I have no idea what they were going for here, but that's the best I can come up with, as the game goes straight from that ending into the triumphant credits music. Circling back to the title of the video, do I think Mega Man 2 is in any way overrated or undeserving of its spot in the pantheon of gaming greats? Well, no, I really don't think so. I mean, I certainly don't think this is the greatest game I've ever played, nor do I think it's anywhere near the list of best games to ever be made, but in terms of the best NES games, I think it's a worthy mention in that conversation. Like I was just saying, it was honestly a miracle that Mega Man 2 even got made in the first place. Something like that probably just wouldn't happen today. Unpopular games or niche hits usually don't get that many sequels. But the developers were able to do this game and refine the idea of what Mega Man was from the fun but flawed first game, and then in turn produced one of the most revered and influential side-scrollers of the 1980s that spawned a million sequels and spin-offs. Mega Man in its current form exists because of Mega Man 2. And that covers everything from art design to boss design to level progression and all that. That fact cannot be understated. Sure, I think there are better games and a plethora of better Mega Man games as well, but this one is really cool and worth your time if you enjoy retro 2D platformers. I won't be replaying it every day or anything, but if I ever feel the need, I will certainly enjoy it. Especially now that I've experimented with the game's design much more than I used to, giving me a newfound appreciation for it. Now, amongst the retro NES crowd, this game was the most popular and most successful, so therefore it's remembered as the best of the NES bunch, but Mega Man had quite a lot of games in the console. So next up we'll be tackling Mega Man 3, which is the second most popular Mega Man game in the NES. This one I really don't remember all that much since I'm confident I haven't even touched it once since the Let's Play from 8 years ago, so it should be interesting to say the least. Until that time comes, I'll say what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.